painting pearls is easier than you think, and I'm going to show you exactly how you can do it no matter your skill level. Hello wonderful people, it's Genevieve, and my goal here on this channel is to teach you all about illustration and design. Now you can totally watch only this one specific video if all you care about is how to paint pearls, but I do want to mention that it is part of a complete digital art course designed as a month-long, 100% free YouTube series. So if you want to take on the challenge of improving your art skills, make sure to check out the course details on my website and make sure to subscribe as well as ring the bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming lessons. So here, if your pearl is already in an illustration that exists, you would obviously paint it there, but if you're just practicing following the course, go ahead and create a new canvas that is big enough so you can zoom in and not see a bunch of pixels, but it doesn't need to be too big either because obviously we're not going to print that, so it doesn't matter. For reference, these are the dimensions I will be using. It is literally just the size of my iPad screen. And if you're working in Procreate and you want to have the little reference image like this, just go in the wrench icon menu. In the canvas section, you're going to have the option to activate reference here, which is going to let you import an image. So if you want to download my little illustration here as your reference, I will link it in the description below. It's totally free. And if you're just practicing, I recommend you set your background to a neutral gray color, because that's just going to help you focus on the texture more and it's going to give you a more accurate perception of the contrast within the pearl, so that's really good for practicing. And just like for every other texture we did in this course, we're going to start with just a silhouette. So the basic shape we're going to use for the pearl. Here it's a pearl, I'm going to go with a circle. And in terms of colors, we're mostly going to be working with cream colors, starting with a pretty light cream, but not pure white either. And if you want to use my color palette, I will link it in the description below as well. It's totally free. So for the brush, you're going to pick the most basic brush you can find. So in Procreate, that would be the hard brush in the airbrushing panel. So you just want a circle, no feathering, no texture, just a pure circle. And then you can outline your shape and then filling it in. So once more, we just want a silhouette, so just a solid shape. Now the thing with pearls is they do reflect their environment, but in a very hazy way. So we're going to start by painting a bunch of colors. And for that, you might want to create a new layer, rename it to colors. And if you do have clipping masks available in your software, go ahead and activate it on this color layer. So the color layer should be a clipping mask on the base. If you don't have a clipping mask, don't worry. Basically, all a clipping mask does is what we draw on this color layer is now going to stay within the base shape. So that's super helpful. But if you don't have them, you just draw on the color layer and later go back with an eraser to clean up everything that is going outside of the base. So we're going to start playing with the reflections, and since they're really hazy, they're not super defined and you're not using any kind of specific colors from your environment just yet. So we're just going to start with a darker version of your base pearl color. So kind of a dark beige suede color, and a super soft brush. So again, just a round brush with no texture to it, but that has a lot of feathering. If you're working in Procreate, that would be the soft brush from the airbrushing panel. And you're going to draw the top half of your pearl, leaving a little bit of a gap around the edge. So something a little bit like this. And don't worry, it doesn't need to be precise in any way. We're just starting to map out everything, and later we're going to refine the different shapes. So once you have that section painted, go ahead and pick a kind of a grayish yellow, almost greenish color, to be honest. Not too dark though, make sure it's still pretty light. And with the same super soft brush, you're going to paint towards the bottom part of this beige taupe shape that you just painted. And the placement really doesn't need to be precise. The only thing you need to make sure here is that everything is super diffuse and again, hazy. So basically here we're just building reflections. I know it looks crazy right now, but trust me, when we add the highlights, it's going to look like a pearl. So you are going to go this time with a lighter version of your base color. So make sure it's lighter than what you used as the base and also less saturated. So it's going to be essentially a light gray, maybe a light gray that has a bit of yellow in it. Honestly, here I'm talking a lot about tiny little details and the variation of color, but it doesn't need to be anything super specific. And with this light gray, you're going to softly paint over the bottom half of your pearl. You can extend that light gray as well towards the very top edge of your pearl, so just kind of blending that in a little bit more. And now on for the fun part. So you're going to go over your dark section of the pearl, so the very top of your dark section, and start layering in lighter colors. It still looks crazy, it still doesn't look like a pearl, but we're building on it. So basically just adding a very intense highlight towards the top. You're then going to go in an even lighter version of your gray, not quite white yet just yet, and going back on the lighter parts, so pretty much the middle of the bottom and then the middle of the top, if that makes any sense at all, you're going to highlight those with an even lighter gray. And you can make your brush even smaller and really going on the very edge of the top of the pearl with that super light gray as well. It's going to help make it pop from the background so much. And finally, you're going to go with pure white to add some very intense highlights in some section of your pearl. Now it's really hard to see, my camera did not pick it up so much, so I'm going to add the example from my iPad on the screen right now so you can see, but basically adding some tiny dots of highlights here and there on your pearl. Now those highlights are going to depend on your light source, so if you have the sun, it would not be a lot of little dots like that. It would probably be one big dot in one part of your pearl. If you are inside though and there's a bunch of light bulbs, that's when you would get all of those little dots. So just keep in mind what your light source is or what your light sources are and kind of draw the reflection of those on the pearl. So essentially one white dot is one light source, more or less. And if, like mine, your pearl is a bit flat towards the bottom here, you might want to go back to your kind of dark beige taupe color, well dark, your beige taupe color, and gently brush it towards the lower edge of your pearl. So you don't want a big section here, really just focusing on the edge, like the very edge of the pearl. And don't hesitate if you feel like you need to go back to the base section that we created first and add a little bit more taupe. Go ahead and do that at this stage. Now you could totally skip this step if you don't have Gaussian blur, but if you do have Gaussian blur, go ahead and activate it. So in Procreate, it's in the adjustment panel, and you would just add a tiny bit of blur. You don't want to over blur everything, otherwise all the work you've done is going to be lost. But adding a bit of blur might save you if a certain section of your pearl was a little bit too harsh. So the tiniest bit of blur you can add it at this stage, or just skip it, honestly, that would totally be fine as well. So now we have a bunch of reflections on the pearl, but we don't necessarily have shadows. So just go ahead and create a new layer, rename it to shadows, and if you do have clipping masks, activate it on that layer as well. And here we are going to use the blending mode linear burn. You could also use multiply if you want, they're both really great for shadows. And you are going to lower the opacity for now around 50%, but we can always come back and change that later. So for your shadows, this is probably one of the only time I'm going to tell you to actually take on a neutral gray because we do want muddy shadows. So just going in with a neutral gray and painting on the bottom right or whichever side of your pearl that should be in the shadow. Now this is way too intense. I'm going to lower the opacity of this layer quite a lot because we do want a shadow, but we don't want it to be overwhelming. And you can see it's just this very slight little thing, but it makes this feel a bit more like a sphere than it did before. So just taking, your light source in consideration, adding a bit shadow can make a big difference. One more thing that can make a big difference is creating this extra color layer. This one you would also apply it as a clipping mask so it stays within the base shape, and you would use the blending mode soft light. For now we're just going to leave it as is, but we can come back to it later. And here you would pick a color that is in your environment. Here I'm just practicing so the background is gray, so I'm just going to pick whatever color. And with a super big version, well, quite big version of your soft brush, you're going to add this color very softly on the sides of your pearl. So you can see right now it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because my background is gray, but if it was on a blue background, for example, it would really help the pearl blend in. And don't hesitate to go back and lower the opacity of this layer quite a lot. But basically this allows you to always use the same color palette to create pearls, because I know it can be kind of confusing to create pearls. So always using the same color palette, but then integrating the pearl in your environment, in your illustration, by just adding this extra color on top at the end. So super easy, super quick, and then it kind of takes the guessing work of the reflection game out of the question. And with that, it is time for the secret password. So if you've watched this far in the video, please go ahead and leave a comment with which element is your pearl on? Is it on a piece of jewelry? Or are you just practicing so it's on a gray background? Just let me know in the comments below. And if you're new on the channel, you might be like, what's the secret password? Like, what is that all about? It's kind of a game we play here. I always hide a secret password at one point in my videos. It does a few things. People seem to really like it, first of all, but it also gives me a lot of insight into how to edit and pace my videos better, which helps me to create better tutorials for you guys, so that's already a win-win. But also it's really cool because you guys know me, you see my face in the intro, you hear my voice throughout the entire video, but I have no idea who you guys are. And so whenever you leave a comment, whatever the comment is, I get to see sometimes your name, sometimes your face, and it's just really cool to see who's part of the creative community that we're building here on this channel. So just let me know where your pearl is, what you're drawing, and we're gonna keep going. So now that we've looked at the main key elements of how to paint pearl, let's talk about the things you need to keep in mind when drawing them in context, whether it's with a reference picture or not. Now, if you're watching this video as part of the full course, now is the time where you can pause and come back tomorrow for day 2 of the pearl study, where you're going to practice the same texture, the same technique, but this time using a reference picture instead of just a sphere. Now, otherwise, make sure to keep watching because these tips can really make a big difference in the final result of your artwork. So when you're painting pearls, there are a few specific questions you need to ask yourself to make sure the material comes across nicely. The main one being, where's the pearl located? So just like for gems, pearls are quite reflective, which means they might have slightly different hues because they might reflect different parts of the environment. So a table, the sky, a person, another part of the jewelry they might be on, all those things. And they might also have a slightly different hue based on the type of pearls that they are. So the key here is really to keep the environment in mind when you're creating your own piece and to make sure to look at a lot of reference pictures along the way to help you with the reflectiveness of the pearls. Now, if you enjoyed this video and want to learn how to paint more textures and material like gold and old metal, I highly recommend you check out this playlist in which I'm going to teach you exactly that. But before you leave, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the weekly videos, and then click on the link right here and I'll meet you there.